about a year and a bit ago, I had a lot of Achilles tendonitis and I did all the usual stuff, right? So I looked in the books and I said, okay, well, you do physiotherapy, you do ultrasound, you do stretching. So I did all that and it was just terrible. So I couldn't really run. And it was like a year I did it. Now, I normally do sort of shorter fasts, 16, 24. I did some 2 day fasts and so on. But a friend of mine, he had tennis elbow and he did a longer fast and it really helped him a lot. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I should try it too. So I did a 5 day fast and really the tendonitis was like 70% better. It was just stunning to me what a difference it made.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our monthly Q&A with our very own Dr. Fung, where he's going to tackle questions submitted by our TFM community members. And hello to our podcast listeners who will be able to listen to this Q&A with Dr. Fung a few weeks after our community members. So, hi, Dr. Fung. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so excited. We're doing this 5-day reset, which is a new reset protocol in our TFM community this week. And so many people are jumping in and enjoying it, learning about ourselves about it. But can you expand a little bit on it and tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of the things that we've done a lot, not in the community, but in coaching and private conversations, which is doing a longer fast, which is this 5 day fast. And it's not necessarily a full fast. And the reason we're doing it is we're trying to create a bit more structure to the community and try and get people on the same sort of timelines because it's important to have a supportive community, and doing things all together is generally easier, whether it's running or whether it's, knitting or whether it's anything really is better. So fasting is really no different. So we're doing this 5 day reset challenge. I'm doing it too. The idea is to do things together so that we can support each other, learn from each other, share tips and all that sort of thing. The reason we're doing it is because recently there's been more and more evidence that these sort of longer fasts have a lot of benefits. And I'll say that from a personal standpoint, I actually noted some difference with it. So about a year and a bit ago, I had I had a lot of Achilles tendonitis and I did all the usual stuff, right? So I looked in the books and I said, okay, well, you do physiotherapy, you do ultrasound, you do stretching. So I did all that and it was just terrible. Like it was just really difficult. So I couldn't really run. And it was like a year I did it. Now I normally do sort of shorter fasts, a lot of 24, 16, 24. I did some 2 day fasts and so on. But a friend of mine said, well, he had tennis elbow and he did a longer fast and it really helped him a lot. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I should try it too, right? So I did a 5 day fast and really the tendonitis was like 70% better. It was just stunning to me what a difference it made because there's not actually a lot of literature on that and tendonitis, but clearly the 5 day fast was very anti-inflammatory in that it was really settling down the inflammation that was at the cause of this Achilles tendonitis. So it was very striking. I thought, man, maybe it's just a coincidence. So then, about a month later, I did it again. And again, it was like 70, 80% better after that. And then I did a third time and then it was completely gone. I'm like, this is crazy because I can't find, there's no literature on it. There's anecdotal reports, but that's not really evidence, but there's nothing in there. But I'm like, it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter what the studies say. If it helps me, it helps me. And that's all it is. But the data has actually been increasing. So these modified 5 day fasts, there's a lot of data now to suggest that there's a lot of benefits to them, not simply the weight loss and all that sort of stuff, but also decreased inflammation, perhaps a bit of anti-cancer effects. And what happens is that when you do the longer fast, you really pump up that growth hormone. If you remember during fasting, your insulin drops, but these other hormones go up, and that's the counter-regulatory hormones. So that's things like cortisol, which does go up, yes, but also growth hormone and sympathetic tone. But growth hormone skyrockets as you go. So they've done these studies out to 5 days. And what you see is a bit of increase in the first day. So if you're doing 24, 36, you're getting a little bit of increase. But by the time you're getting 4 or 5 days, you're just getting a lot of growth hormone. I suspect that that may have helped with a lot of what I felt. The other thing is that sympathetic tone goes up, so appetite decreases. So as you increase sympathetic tone, hunger decreases and ghrelin decreases with the longer fast. So again, we see this when you're doing multiple day fasts, the ghrelin sort of steadily goes down, which means hunger tends to go down, and sympathetic tone goes up. So again, hunger tends to go down. So both very, very good effects, but only when you push out to the longer effects. Some of the studies show the anti-inflammatory effects take sort of 5 to 7 days. So therefore, rather than simply saying, let's just do a lot of the 24s, let's do once in a while the longer ones because, hey, some people might find that they really do well with that. And like anything else, the more you do it, the easier it gets. And the more support you have and the more group you have to do it is better. So I've really found, so today is day 3 because it's Wednesday. So we started, my last real meal was on Sunday. A lot of the data shows that even if you take a little bit of food during that fasting day, you still retain a lot of the benefits. So really, it makes it easier. So then, if you retain 80% of the benefits, but it's like 50% is hard or 40% is hard, hey, the net benefit is there, right? So, if you're nervous about it, you can take a little more calories. If you're less nervous about it, you can take less. So, we have a whole schedule set out for you in terms of that. We have the teas, which are coming. So I know we've talked about this. The fasting method is working with my son actually to bring these teas and bone broths so that we'll actually have more recipes. That's probably coming in a couple of months. There are certain things we recommend, such as the bone broths, which will have not only do you get the hydration, but then you can add salt in it. This is going to be a powdered bone broth to make it easy because I make bone broth, but honestly, it's like a whole day process. It's sort of a pain in the butt. So this is just going to be a powdered one. It'll be a chicken broth to start, but you just stir it up in water and you might boil it for a minute or two. But the great thing about this one that we're working on is that there's really only one ingredient, which is chicken bones. There's nothing else. And then you get all the nutrients from the chicken, right? You get the collagen, you get the proteins, and that really supports the fast. And what I do is I stir in like a little bit of miso, which gives me the salt and actually a bit of taste to it. So it really tastes really good. I put a little bit of green onion to make it really tasty. So I had that yesterday and it really just makes it like a meal, but you're getting really very little calories, but you're getting the nutrients, the salt, and the electrolytes. The electrolytes we're working on too, but that may take a bit longer. So the potassium, the sodium, and so on. We're getting it all together to support everybody with this. I encourage people to go on the daily supports because that's where everybody's for, to talk about how they're feeling, how to deal with the hunger, because the hunger, it does come. So you have to be ready for it. You have to know what you're doing, and how you're feeling, right? Because we're on day 3 now. So this is sort of my favorite time of the fast, day 3, day 4, day 5, because this is where I really start to notice, my pants just fit a little bit different. I notice a little less of the bloating because, again, when you do the fasting, it's anti-diuretic, meaning you're going to pee out some of the fluid. You're not holding on to so much water. Yeah, as you get older, you start to notice things like the sock line and stuff, right? So, when you take off your sock, there's a little bit of line there, right? Because the circulation's not as good as 25 years ago. But I get it less. So I notice a lot less bloating. I notice my pants are fitting a bit better, probably because of the bloating, but also that, I know that I've gotten through that sort of the burning of the sugar, the glycogenolysis part. I've gotten through the gluconeogenesis, and now I'm in fat burning. And I know that, hey, for the next 2 days, I'm just going to be burning fat, which is great. Then it's only a few more days and then I'll eat again. So, it's really, this is where I really like it. I remember a couple months ago, it was strange because I was going to do a 5-day fast. And we wound up having dinner with family on like the day 3. And I remember thinking, damn, right? It's like, of all the days, like, why did you have to do it? And like, why didn't we do it next week? Right. But of course it was, family. So of course I cut it short and then I just did it again because there's always time to do it again. But again, this is what we're trying to do is really follow the science, but really provide the support and the structure. So every month we're actually going to change it up. I think Megan's going to work on it. I'm not sure if you're working on it, Lisa, but we're going to change it up a little bit in terms of what you're doing, what you're taking, and then really focus in on those daily sessions, on the mindset, on the habits and so on. Because once it gets into a habit, it's actually not bad at all. And I know actually three other people personally, like family members who had been doing it for a while. Like they do these 5-day fasts and, they've kept the weight off. They're feeling really good. And that's where we're going with this. And I think it's been helpful for me personally, even though I'd done the fasting before. I usually had stuck to the shorter ones, but really pushing that envelope has really helped me. I mean, yes, it took the Achilles tendonitis to really push me, but the science is moving in that direction too. And that's where I think that we can really help people and we can really help each other, right? I know I talked to Megan about maybe doing some in-person meetups for people during this. That's often very useful to talk about things, maybe going for a walk in the park, that kind of thing. And, if the locations are nice, or arranging meetups so that people can do this where you can really support each other. Because, one of the things is that if you have dinner normally, well, you want to be doing something else because the hunger is going to come up during that time. But if you schedule something like a nice walk in the park or something like that, hey, that might be something to take your mind off, really talk about something else, and then by the time you get back, sort of get over that period. So yeah, I think it's going to be really, really useful. I think it's going to be really helpful. It's something that we've actually had a lot of people doing over the years, but never formally like this. And that's where I think it's pretty exciting to be a fasting method community member, but really we're bringing these sort of advanced tools from the coaching, from the personal side of things. We've never done it sort of like this before because we've always been afraid that people get into trouble, with the longer fast if they're on medications and stuff. But again, the science is moving towards this. So, hey, there's nothing stopping us from doing it.
One of the questions in the Q&A box is, can we continue doing this for 5 days, 7, 10 days? How long? Is it unsafe to go?
Oh, there's nothing to stop you from going longer. So if you're feeling good, you can go longer. To me, it's a balance of the physiology and the social stuff. Because usually, so what I do is I do it on a Sunday, I finish dinner, and then I plan to eat again Friday. Because Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, often there's social things, family dinners, friends, going out, that make it very difficult for me to really sustain that for 7 days. So everybody's different. But if there's nothing wrong with going 7 days, because remember, by the time you get into that 5th day, you're basically in the fat burning state and your hunger levels tend to be lower. So if you don't have anything and you want to keep going, then keep going. You're going to continue reaping the benefits of that because you know that if you're not eating, you're burning something and there's not much sugar, right? The body stores calories in two forms, sugar and fat. If you have excess sugar, like diabetes, actually, it's a very good thing. If you don't have any more sugar, then you're going to burn fat. And of course, everybody loves to do that. So yeah, you can go 7 days, 10 days, whatever you want. We're just doing 5 as a sort of good intermediary. It's long enough that you're going to start seeing the benefits of the really pumped up growth hormone, sympathetic tone. You're going to feel that energy. I noticed it yesterday, even playing tennis, I was like a little bit more focused than usual. So you're going to start seeing those benefits of the longer fast. And of course, we're not doing this all the time. We're just planned for doing it once a month and then changing it up and doing some other things. But yeah, if you want to go longer, by all means.
Same with people who've never done a 72.
Yeah.
You can use this to try to get to 3 days and see how you feel.
Yeah.
And don't feel bad about pulling back, and all the things that you need to do, like if you're feeling shaky or something like that, to break your fast, of course.
Yeah. And of course, there's the check-ins every day for that to help you. So that's another thing.
Sometimes if you're feeling like that, there's olives. Olives or half of avocado. There's all sorts of things that are on the list that you can try.
Are you new to fasting and just aren't sure how to get started? Or have you been working on fasting for a while now and keep running into obstacles? We have coaches at TFM that can help you through this journey. We can help you learn the necessary skills, support you, help you create your plans and tweak them when things need to be changed. We offer health coaching, and accountability coaching depending on what you need. Some of our coaches offer one-on-one coaching where each session is specifically focused on you and what you're working on to achieve your goals. We also offer small group coaching. This option allows you to get the support with several other clients who are also working on the things that you're working on. Either way, you get the specific help that you are looking for to help you make your fasting a successful journey. Whether you're working on weight loss, improving your health, increasing your longevity, you can achieve that in working with one of our TFM coaches. All you have to do is sign up for a free intake session to get to meet with a coach and see if coaching is the right thing for you.
You did a wonderful YouTube video, 5 ways to naturally boost the Ozempic effect. And I will put the link to that in the show notes for this podcast, which is great for understanding the incretin hormones like the GLP-1 and the GIP. So I realized that the relationship between bitters and incretins and autophagy is complex and that a direct cause and effect relationship, but the incretin response doesn't directly promote autophagy. It primarily regulates blood sugar and satiety, from my understanding. Autophagy is mainly triggered by the nutrient scarcity, correct?
Yeah.
And low insulin levels, not the bitter compounds themselves. But could you expand on why using bitter grains can help reset a lot of this?
Yeah, the bitterness is interesting. The nutrient sensors, there's a couple of main ones, right? Insulin is one we talked about, which switches you into that sort of, instead of storing calories as sugar or fat, insulin switches, when you fast, insulin goes down, which switches you into a energy burning mode. So glycogen and fat. So there's de novo lipogenesis and glycogen synthesis, right? So if you have high insulin, you're going to want to store calories. When insulin is low, you're flipping that switch and going the other way. For autophagy, it's mostly protein, so mTOR is the main one. You know, a little bit of protein is okay, but you notice that when we have our things to eat during it, it's relatively low in protein. There's a bit in the bone broth and stuff, but that's very little. Mostly it's going to be like olives and avocados and stuff, sort of high fat, low carb sort of thing. And relatively low in protein too, because we do want that sort of bit of autophagy. A little bit of protein is okay, but you notice that we're not putting like salmon or something in there, right? It's like olives and stuff. The little hit of salt is actually really, really nice during the fast as well. It actually tastes really, really good. The bitterness works on a different pathway. And again, it probably works along the GLP-1 and satiety pathway rather than the nutrient sensor. Bitterness initially was thought to be sort of a protective mechanism against poison. That's how people used to think about it. Hey, if it's bitter, you're not going to eat it. But actually, that's not strictly true because there's a lot of bitter things that people like, lots of bitter things, actually. So even if you have drinks, you have bitters, right? People put bitterness directly in, or quinine or something like that. So all these very bitter compounds are things like eggplant, which is a little bit bitter, kale, which is a little bit bitter. People love these things. So it's not so strictly true because it's not simply like people avoid bitterness. So the bitterness can be good, but mostly it has benefits in terms of GLP-1 and satiety. And also people have traditionally used these bitter melon and stuff for diabetes. It's actually a very traditional remedy for diabetes. So it really seems to help blood sugars, probably through that same GLP-1 pathway. So it sort of all ties in with what people have done traditionally. That is, it's not necessarily the bitterness, it's that these bitter compounds may stimulate the GLP-1 pathway, which is good.
Yeah, you may get to satiety quicker.
Yeah.
Especially at that 24-hour mark, 28-hour mark. Sometimes that's the witching zone to get through when you're doing a fast. So have some greens, have arugula and other greens that are listed.
Yeah. Arugulas and that sort of thing. Perfect.
Great. The next question is, this person has had some success lowering their weight a couple of times using fasting and doing time-restricted eating, but the weight creeps back up after a while, even when still maintaining TRE. They're very happy that they can get back to doing what they need to do to get the weight down, but they're wondering what the scientific evidence is that shows your body weight set point. And we've talked about this. I'll post some of the podcasts in the past where you talked about body set point. But is there a foolproof method for setting that? Are there steps that you have to do? Is there a length of time? Is it 3 months or 6 months that you have to maintain that weight at?
It's not like that. I mean, the body set point is basically like the thermostat in your house, right? So you set a room temperature. If it gets too hot, it turns on the air conditioning to cool it down. If it gets too cold, turns on the heat to bring it back up. Your body does have a set point. So like that thermostat, it wants to be at a certain weight. So the question of why people are if you're overweight, it means your set point's set very, very high. And you see this, of course. So if you take a person who is overweight and make them lose weight, they will very rapidly regain that weight. If you take a lean person, make them overweight, and then once you stop, they'll actually very quickly go down to their lean weight because the thermostat had been set there. So the question of why people gain weight isn't just the calories, right? It's the thermostat. Because if your thermostat is set very high, then you're either going to be very hungry so that you gain weight to go back up, or if you don't eat calories, then your energy expenditure, how much energy you burn, is going to go down until you gain that weight. That's why the calories in, calories out is sort of all wrong because it doesn't tell you how to affect that thermostat. And it's really affected by hormones. So insulin is one, GLPs are one, sympathetic tone is one. So there's a list of, 4 or 5 or 6 major hormonal pathways that are going to influence the weight. So if you push up the insulin, your body set weight's going to get pushed up. You see this, of course, when you give people insulin. When you give people insulin, it doesn't matter how much willpower they have, they gain weight. Why? Because you're telling your body to gain weight. There are other pathways like the GLP-1. So if you give people Ozempic and you really stimulate the GLP-1s, that forces the body set weight down. And then you see they're not so hungry. So this idea is that it's really set by the hormones. So it goes up, it goes down, and it's not influenced just by a single hormone, but sort of multiple hormonal pathways do converge on that. I actually go into a little bit more of that in the hunger code, which is coming up. It's the sort of follow-up to the obesity code, which is coming out next year, I think, spring 2026. So it's in editing.
You got a new book coming out. That's right.
Yeah. So that's going to talk a bit more about the body fat thermostat and how to reset it. How really ultra-processed foods are really one of the keys to avoid. Fasting is the other real big key because ultra-processed food actually affects the insulin in a lot of ways other than the carbohydrates. So the speed at which you eat food affects it. So if you have very soft foods, very easy to eat foods, like a lot of ultra-processed foods, you eat it quickly, it gets absorbed very quickly, your insulin spikes like that, your glucose and insulin spike like that. You can take the same number of carbohydrates, but in a whole form, and your blood glucose will be much flatter. You see this in the glycemic index, so commercial white bread is very high, but if you take something like pumpernickel bread, it's actually much lower. It's like 20-30% lower, even though it has the same number of carbohydrates. The difference is how quickly you absorb it. So speed of digestion, speed of absorption, speed of eating all make a difference to that insulin level. So the key is not to eat necessarily a low carbohydrate diet, but a low insulin diet. So food order matters. You can go through some of these articles that I've posted on medium.com. And remember, you can always get the friend link from the fasting method. So if you're not part of the fasting method, you have to pay for the medium.com articles. If you are part of the fasting method, you can get these friend links, which will allow you to read them all for free. So that's one of the things is to look at the insulin particularly. There's no set time period, but just cutting down the carbohydrates sometimes isn't enough. The TRE is beneficial, but again, I've actually thought recently that doing these longer fasts every so often is actually a really great way just to force that thermostat down. And it's really made it a lot easier, honestly, I have to say, compared to what I used to do, which is a lot of the shorter ones. I've actually found it a lot easier using these 5-day resets.
And how you break too. Don't go crazy when you break. Go right back to a couple of days of TRE, no snacking, and then go back to your regular fasting that you've been doing.
Yeah.
So yeah. This is exciting, and it's so neat to see the community kind of get a new shot in the arm, because the first meeting Jill had, there were like 220 people in there, and they were all supporting one another, and everybody had different helpful hints that they did. Some things work for some people and some things don't. Like you mentioned bone broth. I don't do well with bone broth, but you mentioned miso. I do quite well with miso. So finding out what works for you is all part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you find something that works better, of course, then do that. You don't have to follow what we say because everybody's different. So, some people, for example, will really we recommend green tea a lot because green tea has certain hormones that help reduce the hunger. It affects a different pathway, the COMT, which helps break down the sympathetic hormones, sympathetic nervous system hormones, so allows that, so it gives you a bit more energy, but also suppresses the hunger a little bit better. Some people don't like that, but I do, and I actually drink it. One of the keys, I think, is I drink it in the summertime. I make a big pot all the time. I put it in the fridge. I think it tastes great. Some of these ones, and we're getting this lemon ginger one, actually. I don't know when, but the teas are supposed to be coming. It's a slow process, and I've been using it iced, and it just tastes great, right? So I drink it all through the day, and I'm like, oh, this is just fantastic. It's as good as anything else.
And experiment with those teas, because green tea works great for me. Peppermint works great for me. Chamomile, not so much. But that's probably because it's in the ragweed family and I don't do well with ragweed. So, don't just give up after you try one thing and it doesn't work. Try something else.
Yeah, we have a herbal tea coming, I think, that has a little bit of licorice in it, which I actually think is fantastic. But again, it's one of these compounds. Some people don't like it, but it's got a little bit of that bitterness, right? And I actually think it really lends a really great sort of dimension to it. The one that we're making, I think it's a caffeine-free one. That's why it has a bit of mint, a bit of licorice, a bit of ginger. It's an herbal tea. It's not a green tea, but I just really think it's great. So that should be coming within a couple of months. Right. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. So this next question is, Dr. Fung, your kidney patients who are type 2 diabetics and close to getting dialysis, but are skinny, I'm assuming they need to fast for more than a year to reverse the kidney damage. Is this true? But how do they do so with so little fat mass?
Well, kidney disease, not necessarily. There's a lot of kidney diseases that have nothing to do with diabetes. So the biggest cause of kidney disease is diabetes. But once you have the damage to the kidneys, it doesn't necessarily reverse because a lot of damage is done. It's sort of like if you don't change the oil in your car, then it breaks down. Then you say, now I'll change the oil in my car. It doesn't make your car run better. It may prevent further damage. But the thing about kidney disease is that once you have the kidney disease, that can lead to more kidney disease because the remaining kidney has to take over. So it's working harder and it will wear out faster. There is a little bit of data in other types of kidney disease that these 5-day fasts can be useful. Some very preliminary data that it's useful in other types of kidney disease as well. And I think it's actually due to the lowering of the insulin levels because insulin is a growth hormone. It actually promotes a lot of scarring, which leads to this nephrosclerosis. So that's why certain medications, the new medications that lower insulin, so the Ozempic lowers insulin, right? It makes you nauseated so you don't eat. When you don't eat, your insulin goes down. And also the SGLT2s, which are diabetic medications, they make you pee out sugar, but they lower insulin. So then you can lose a bit of weight, but it actually turns out to have massive kidney protective effects. So it's not necessarily the weight. Fasting may or may not help. It may be the inflammation, maybe the lower insulin. But if you have an underlying kidney disease process, such as IgA nephritis, which is the most common cause of glomerulonephritis overall, it may or may not reverse. The inflammation may or may not reverse. So they may still progress. I wish everybody could just do that and it'd be fine. But it actually, you have to understand what the underlying process is and whether it's helped. Fasting helps in a lot of different ways, so probably less scarring. And that's why in this very preliminary study, what they found in the 5-day sort of reset fast is that a number of kidney diseases were actually helped by the 5-day fast. It's not that it reverses, it slows down the progression. It still progresses, but it slows down the progression of how quickly the kidney disease goes on. I mean, it's like trying to get younger, right? It's very hard to do.
Well, I had a client that was, I believe he was like 32 on his EGFR, a glomerular filtration rate. And he did a lot of fasting. He did fantastic. And he actually got his GFR up above 90. And then after staying there for a year or two, his wife passed and he dived back into problematic food. So not quite too much processed food, but still, he gained some weight back. Then he had a heart issue. And I think part of it was broken heart syndrome. But he had to go in for a cath lab and everything. But his GFR remained good.
Yeah.
So now he's back on track. He's back fasting. So he was very pleased because that's why he originally came to TFM.
Yeah. I've had a few cases where people's kidney functions just completely got better, but more cases where they really you just sort of slow it down.
Yes, stop the progression of it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this person says, I know that vitamin D is a fat soluble and is best taken with a meal, but I've also heard that all supplements are better absorbed when taken with a meal. Is this true? And what time frame is considered with a meal when it comes to supplement? Before, during, after? Then they also want to know about vitamin D interrupting sleep, so she should take it best in the morning. I'm going to say yes to that because it interferes with melatonin. But can you address the rest of it, Dr. Buck?
The vitamins, there's water-soluble vitamins like B and C, in which case, of course, you don't need fat. And then there's fat-soluble vitamins, right? So A, D, E, K are fat-soluble vitamins. So therefore, if they're fat-soluble, fat and water don't mix, right? So if you take fat-soluble vitamins, then they don't get absorbed as well if you don't take it with a meal. When is with a meal? Within 2 hours, say, of a meal is still fine. Because remember, when you're eating, that food doesn't go right into your intestines. It gets held in the stomach. So when you eat a meal, it gets held in the stomach and your stomach sort of pushes a little bit out at a time into your intestines because your intestines cannot absorb that much nutrient so quickly. So your body is a reservoir. It holds it and then just gives a little bit. So if you take somebody whose stomach is cut out for, cancer, for example, you get this thing called dumping syndrome because they don't have this reservoir to slowly parcel out a little bit of food to the intestines. The intestines get all this food right away. Then you get all these symptoms. People feel terrible. So if you take it sort of an hour after a meal, there's still food in the stomach. There's a bit of fat. Everything's all mixed up, but then you can still take it. If you take it before, well, it's probably not ideal. It may still be held there, but on an empty stomach, of course, if your stomach has nothing in it and you take the vitamin, the first thing that's going to get pushed out into the intestines is your vitamin. So therefore, you're not going to have the fat that needs to do that. So if you are worried about that, then yeah, take it with a meal or within 2 hours, say 2 to 3 hours, even up to 4 hours sometimes, depending on what meal it is, because certain foods get pushed out much faster. So if you're to compare, say, an apple slice to applesauce, which is actually baked and, so you take an apple, you bake it, you puree it. So it's exactly the same nutrients. It gets pushed out into the stomach much faster because the stomach's sort of churning it and making sure it's good to go, and then it gets pushed out. So I think the apple slice leaves the stomach in like 65 minutes and the applesauce is like 44 minutes. So it gets pushed out much faster. But the point is that depending on what the meal is, what you're eating, it gets pushed out faster or slower, but say 2 hours is a reasonable amount. That's why when you eat, after you eat, your sugars sort of continue to go up, right? Your insulin levels don't go down the minute you put down your fork because there's still food in the stomach. It's still slowly going into the intestines. Your insulin levels still go up after a meal and then slowly come down. Same as your sugars. So it still goes up after a meal.
So I'm going to let you pronounce the medical term for this, but this person is asking about gallstones and the formation of them. And you did talk about this in episode number 171, which is like well over a year ago. But we're going to revisit here because this person has said, how do you rate the risk of this in various fasting protocols? How do you rate the risk of newer formation of gallstones if the patient has already had one or more? What's your experience with fasting on this?
Yeah, so there's generally less formation of new gallstones. Like if the gallstone is there, it's a stone. It's like a little rock, right? You can't dissolve it. But if you're eating less carbohydrates and stuff, if you're eating more fat, which is what we often recommend, lowering the carbs, increasing the fats, When you eat more fat, it forces the pancreas to squeeze out more of the pancreatic juices and stuff, including from the gallbladder, to solubilize the fats. Therefore, you're continually using up the stuff in the gallbladder, so it keeps the flow going better. So if you're eating a super low fat diet, which is of course what we told people to do 20 years ago, then you get a lot of gallstones because your gallbladder is holding on to this stuff to solubilize the fat. There's no fat, so it's just sitting there. So you get a stasis of that, and then you get stones forming. If, on the other hand, you're eating fats, so you're always squeezing your gallbladder down, shooting it out, it's not going to sit there, right? It's not going to be stagnant, and then therefore you get the stones. For new stones, as opposed to old stones, you're going to get less if you're going to eat the higher fat diet. Yeah. One other thing, I was just reading the comments. Tara was just saying that she felt much hungrier day one using the aids as opposed to the water salt only. If that's the case, then don't use it. So I'll tell you that on day 1 and 2, I do the same thing. I actually don't eat all of that. I don't need it, and I don't really want it. I do make adjustments too. So this is sort of it's just a guideline. So if you do better without it, I'm the same, right? I don't need it to get through day 1 and 2. And it actually probably doesn't work as well for me. For a lot of people, they find it very useful because they have that witching hour, sort of 24 hours, and that's what it's meant for, right? Get over that. I discussed this with Megan. I said, do we really need the sort of mid-afternoon snack? He said, that's the worst period for most people. So that's why we put that in there, right? I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, I don't have that problem personally. So I actually don't do that. Day 1 and 2, actually, I don't barely eat anything at all. I'm mostly just cheese and a bit of bone broth. But again, if you find that it's useful for you, let us know so that everybody else can benefit and say, hey, what is your experience? And if they don't need it, then don't take it. It's totally okay. It's all what works best for you.
For you, individual. Yeah.
It's totally individual. And that's why it's great to be in a group like this where we can say, hey, this is what works for me. And I can say, that's what works for me too, right? I mean, even though we use something that we know a lot of people help, it may not help you, and that's okay. You don't have to do it, right? If you want to take a bit more
and you do,
or a bit less.
You do fine for a day or two, and then on the 3rd or the 4th day you're struggling, then try the steamed asparagus. See if that gets you through, and you can carry on.
Yeah.
So yeah,
exactly.
Great. Adapt it to you. Personalize it.
Perfect.
Now you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
That's perfect.
Thanks so much, Dr. Fung. This was fun.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you for bringing this to the community.
Yeah.
All righty, everyone. See you next month.
All right. Bye.